Hello everyone, my name is Siddhartha Kaparthy. This is my graduate project. I'm going to explain about simple random sampling. Uh, Here comes the abstract. The examining units and their situations inside and populace are recognized by a testing outline. It very well may be founded on a guide of a populace district where test unit should be visible, or it may very well be a rundown of inspection units. It is normal for a stock of lots backwards or different populace to come up shorts and rundown of explicit species, yet to have a guide of the area accessible. There are known ways for choosing a direct irregular example of fixed region plots. When a guide like this is the main examining outline within reach. In the event that the example is to be comprised of single populace individuals as opposed to gatherings of them in plots, there are less well-known choice accessible. Here come the project objective. A subset of a populace is picked indiscriminately in a fundamental irregular testing. In this examining system, the likelihood of choosing every individual from the populace is precisely equivalent. This procedure is the most direct of all likelihood inspecting strategies since it simply requires a solitary irregular choice and minimal earlier data about the populace. Because of the randomization, any review done on this example ought to have extraordinary inner and outer legitimacy. An essential irregular inspection as an equivalent possibility choosing each individual from the populace. Your examining outline should be illustrate of the populace. This sort of examining can be completed utilizing irregular number generators or different strategies that exclusively depend on possibility. Straightforward irregular inspection is one procedure utilized by scientists to pick an example from a bigger populace. In the event that every individual from a populace has an equivalent likelihood of getting picked, then this strategy will work. Here comes the motivation. Straightforward irregular testing is utilized to make inference about a populace measurements. The best strategy for limiting the impact of any jumbling factor is randomization. Subsequently, it assists with having outstanding interior legitimacy. At the point when the example size is sufficiently huge, a straightforward irregular example likewise has fantastic outside legitimacy since it precisely catches the elements of the bigger populace. Related works. There are various ways to deal with select the example, which are convenced in rating and examining strategies, contingent upon the attributes of the populace and the data looked for through choosing for it. Straightforward irregular examining, which gives each individual from a populace an equivalent opportunity of considering in the example of gives each possible example of an allowed size and equivalent opportunity of determination. It may be the least difficult testing strategy. This work is worried about the difficult that might emerging in gigantic populace, like those seen in tremendous timberland regions. When a straightforward irregular testing of individual things like individual trees is required. Before an example can be taken from a populace, it is expected to have a testing outlet. That is a technique that recognized and put an examined unit inside the populace. Choose by a nitty-gritty by and Valentine. It will maybe a rundown examiner in which each and every testing unit has been recorded. Methodology. The examining unit and very situation inside a populace are recognized by a testing outline. It very well may be founded on a guide of a populace district where test units should be visible, or it may very well be rundown of an inspecting units. It is normal for a stock of large backwards or different populations to come up short on rundown of explicit spaces, yet to have a guide of an area accessible. There are known way of choosing a direct irregular example of fixed region plots. When a guide like this is the main examined outline within reach, in event that the example is compressed of single populations, individuals as opposed to gathering of them in the plots. There are less well known as known to accessible. Steps to perform simple random sampling. There are four key steps to select a simple random sampling. Step 1. Define the population. Step 2. Decide on the sample size. Step 3. Randomly select your sample. Step 4. Collect data from your sample. Step 1. Define the population. Begin by picking on the population you want to research. It's critical that you have access to every single person in the population so that you may gather data from everyone who is chosen for the sample. Example, population. The population of American community survey is made up of all 128 million households in the United States, including households made up of citizens and non-citizens alike. Step 2. Decide on the sample size. The next step is to determine the size of your sample. Larger sample provides more statistical certainty, but they are also more expensive and time consuming. One of the simplest methods for determining the size of your sample is to use a formula that includes your desired confidence interval and confidence level, the estimated size of the population you are dealing with, and the standard deviation of whatever you want to measure in your population. The most commonly utilized confidence intervals and levels are 0.05 and 0.95. You should choose a value that is high enough to allow for a variety of possibility because you may not know the standard deviation of the population you are investigating. Step 3. Randomly select your samples. This can be accomplished in one of two ways, through a lottery or by using a random number generators. The sample is chosen at random by drawing from a hat or by employing a computer program that simulates the same activity in the lottery technique. You assign a number to each individual using the random number procedure. You next select the subset of the population at random using a random number generator or random number tables. The procedure random number, your Microsoft Excel random number function. It's known as RAND. Collect data from your sample. Finally, you must gather information from your sample. To ensure validity of your findings, make sure that everyone who have been chosen actually takes part in the study. If some people leave out or don't participate for reasons related to the issues you are researching, your results may be skewed. For example, if young people are consistently less likely to engage in your study, your conclusions may be invalid due to this group's underrepresentation. Why sample random samplings? It is fair sample technique that, when used properly, aids its minimizing bias compared to other sampling techniques. It is typically sampled to choose a smaller sample size from the existing bigger population because it requires a large sample frame. The research need to be familiar with the information that they are gathering beforehand. A question can be posed to acquire information. Subjects matter expertise is not required. A crucial technique for gathering the data is this sampling approach. You don't require technology expertise. You only need the very minimal of recording and listening abilities. There are no restrictions on sample size that the research need to be established because the size is so large which with this kind of sampling procedure. Here comes the evaluation. Step 1. Define the population. Start by deciding on the population that you want to study. Step 2. Decide on the sample size. Next, you need to decide how large your sample size will be. randomly select your sample, followed by collect data from your sample. A sample random sample takes a sample random portion of the entire portion, represents the entire data set where each member has an equal probabilities chosen. Research can be create a sample random sample using methods like random draws or random draws. Based on the electronic listings of households in a geographically constrained area, conducting the survey using a straightforward random sampling method is practical. Spending enough time at each home ensures that the interviews obtained a representative sample of sample frames. The completeness, correctness, and the timeliness of the computerized household listening must urgently be increased. These are some of the references. Thank you.